Hi Dad, I wanted to make you a video right quick about this pistol. It's in this box. First I'll show you what else is in the box with it. You can see it's got some wax preservative paper. Here's a cleaning rod, a brush, a barrel bushing wrench, which I'll explain in greater detail here in just a minute, and a 1/16 inch brass roll pin punch, which is useful but not strictly necessary. Also in here is molybdenum disulfide grease. This is an ounce, and this is basically a lifetime supply. I'll explain more about this in just a minute. And this preservative paper is just another magazine, and of course the gun itself. My inspiration for this project was the Colt Series 70 stainless guns, and also some of the early custom stainless guns from about the 1980s onwards. So you'll see some features of this gun that look more classic or retro than what you'll find in custom guns today, and I generally like the older styling myself. Some features on this will be different from a factory gun. First and foremost is the quality of the parts. I selected very high quality parts for this, including the fire control group. In a lot of factory guns these days you'll find cast, metal injection mold, or even plastic parts. I think in the current Colts the trigger shoes are plastic. This trigger shoe is aluminum, only because it needs to be softer than the stainless of the frame, because the trigger shoe has to be filed to fit the frame so that there's no slop if you do this to it. The trigger bow itself is stainless. Everything else in the gun is stainless, with the exception of the sights, which are blued carbon steel. You can see there's a gold bead inlaid in the front sight. That's 14 karat gold. Of course the grips are English walnut. The magazine itself is stainless. There's one other carbon steel part in here that I'll explain in just a minute. As far as magazines go, the standard capacity is 7 rounds. And you can buy extended magazines to almost any size, but for flush fitting magazines 8 rounds is as good as you're going to get. These are Colt factory 8 round magazines, and the gun likes both of these pretty well. So further about the gun, as you can see the barrel is stainless, and it's pretty high quality. This notch is a loaded chamber indicator. So if you look in there and see brass, that tells you that you've got a round in the chamber. If you look in there and see black, as it is now, that means it's unloaded. So to clear it, it's very easy. We'll just hold the slide stop up as we pull the slide to the rear, and that will lock the slide back. We can inspect the chamber and verify that it's clear. First I'll show you how to disassemble, clean, and lubricate this gun, and then I'll cover the manual of arms. This won't take very long, so don't worry. The first step to disassembly is, of course, to clear the gun, as we have now done. Then we're going to release the slide. We're going to place the weapon on safe. Orient the weapon upwards. Hold it like this. Use your barrel bushing wrench and use the larger end of it to capture the bushing. You're going to push down the recoil spring cap, and you're going to rotate the barrel bushing clockwise as far as it'll go, like so. Be sure to hold that cap down so you don't scratch the checkering. Now once you get about this far, make sure that you retain this spring cap with your thumb, or else it'll launch into your eye or into the ceiling. We'll pull that out, separate the two, and set them aside. Now to take it apart further, we'll place the weapon on fire. Move the slide back so that the slide stop lines up with the takedown notch, not the slide stop notch, but the takedown notch right there. And then we'll push from the other side, lift it up, and you can usually pull this out of the frame like so. If you can't get it, you can push it from the other side. Now the frame and slide are loose. We'll turn it upside down, pull the frame off the slide, set the frame down, remove the guide rod, rotate the barrel bushing, the barrel link forwards and down, push the barrel at the front of the slide, and it will take it won't take. We skipped a step. So we'll have to rotate the barrel bushing counterclockwise as far as it'll go, so it'll come out of the slide, like so. Now we'll rotate the link down and forward, push the barrel at the front of the slide, and it will bring the barrel bushing with it. And these all separate. All that remains is to remove the firing pin stop, and extractor. And that is easily accomplished with your roll pin punch. Push the firing pin down and press the the firing pin stop downwards. Sometimes easier said than done. Make sure again that you put your finger over this to retain that spring, because it will go flying. Be sure always to use brass tools when you're doing stuff like this, because steel punch is liable to scratch it, and you don't want that. So now these two things are out, firing pin and spring. This is an extra power spring. You'll notice that this is a Series 70 action, not a Series 80 action. So there's no firing pin block. I don't really believe in those. I think they're a lawyer's invention. But at any rate, this firing pin spring is extra powerful to reduce the likelihood that if you drop the gun from a great height directly on its muzzle, that the firing pin will strike the primer and cause an accidental discharge. Now for the extractor, you can see it in its slot here, and it looks like it can just pull out the back, but it can't, because the claw of the extractor catches the slide. So we're just going to push the claw towards the passenger side of the slide, and then push it down, and it'll pull straight out like so. Don't replace the extractor. As a matter of fact, don't replace any of these parts, because they're not drop-in. Every part has to be fitted to the others, and this extractor has been specifically tuned for this gun, so it needs to stay with the gun. So this is as far apart as you really need to take it for regular cleaning. Occasionally you'll want to drive this pin out, remove the mainspring housing and all the internals of the frame, but that's beyond the scope of this video. You only need to clean the pistol about every 300 to 500 rounds. Every 3,000 rounds or so, let me do some routine maintenance on it. And I'll give it a good deep cleaning and replace any parts that need replacing. The good news is that I used high quality parts, so I'm expecting all of them to last basically for the entire length of the service life of the pistol. Now cleaning is self-explanatory really. If you've cleaned one gun, you've cleaned them all. Just make sure everything is clean, free and clear of copper fouling, powder fouling, whatnot. The feed ramp here is particularly important on the 1911. As you can see, it's polished. It needs to stay pretty clean, and as a field expedient you can just use your finger like that to take the sludge off of it, and that ensures reliable feeding from the magazine into the barrel. Now if it was sandblasted like the rest of the inside of this frame, the gun would not feed. As a matter of fact, when I sandblasted the frame, I tried to get it to feed and it would not, until I polished this up to 600 grit, and now it runs fine with just about anything. I'll get a rag here, but you can see that there's some grease on the frame. That's the molybdenum disulfide grease, and I'll wipe some off here just for demonstration purposes. It comes right off. Don't get it on your clothes because it's kind of nasty, but it's not harmful as far as I know. So when you clean, it doesn't matter what you clean with. Everybody has their own favorite solvent and cleaner. 1911s need to be lubricated as well, and your typical gun oil is not sufficient. It's not really important what lubricant you use. It's really important that you do lubricate. Everybody has their own favorite. Some people swear by some people say that some are worthless. There's all kinds of field expedients you can use, but what I use is the molybdenum disulfide grease. And I'll get a pipe cleaner here and I'll show you real quick how to do that. So it says here on the bottle, apply sparingly, and that is really good advice. You don't need a lot of this stuff. I just dip it in like so and cover the surfaces of the slide rails and the deck of the frame. Anywhere the slide and frame make contact kind of needs some lubrication. That's good for reliability of the gun, and it increases service life. It also helps maintain accuracy throughout the service life of the weapon. As the frame and slide act on each other, they can loosen each other up. And you'll see in well-used and older guns that the frame to slide fit will be really sloppy, even rattly, as is the case with some military guns. That's not good for accuracy. So we've applied sparingly, and now I'm wiping off excess grease. This grease never goes bad. You can leave it on for years. If you don't fire it, it'll still be good. And that's all the grease that you'll use for lubrication on this pistol. For other parts like the barrel, even the slide stop and the recoil spring cap, you'll put a light coat of gun oil. Not that it needs protection as it's stainless, but just to make sure that everything cycles smoothly. Let me put the cap on this. To put it back together, we'll go in reverse order. So let's first put the guts in the slide, starting with the extractor. Another reason why you don't want to replace this extractor is that it's blended to the frame. When I put the gun together, the back had the ejector, the extractor, the slide, and the frame all protruding from one another, and I filed it all to fit flush. So you'll see this fits flush very nicely. That's because I filed it to fit that way. And if you buy a new one, it might stick out that far, or it might give you a divot like this. It'll look bad. But this is a high quality extractor. I expect it to last for a long time. We'll make sure this is straight as best we can. We'll put the firing pin spring and the firing pin itself. So with one hand you're going to hold the slide, hold the extractor in its place so that the top is flush, and that's so the firing pin stop can get into its slot easily. Use your punch to push the firing pin down, being careful not to launch it into the ceiling. And I think I've got a thicker punch around, but it doesn't look like I do. I'll use the back of this. This can be a three-handed job. There we go. All right, and those fit together perfectly because I spent a lot of time on them. I'll put the barrel in. You can lubricate the upper lugs with gun oil and the rest of the barrel as well, just so it rides smooth in the slide. This pin is the last piece of carbon steel I wanted to tell you about, and the barrel link pin is often carbon steel because it has a, I believe, a higher shear strength than stainless. So some people prefer to use carbon steel in place of stainless for this one particular pin. It's what I had on hand, so it's what I've used. The barrel goes in just like that, and it snaps into place. Put the bushing in. There's a little notch in the bushing that protrudes, and that goes downwards on the slide. Push it in, and it goes in with moderate finger pressure. Again, this is a place where I spent a lot of time getting these parts to fit very well, so it's easy to take apart, but also gives you a very good fit. On every part of this gun, you're going to find file marks and little imperfections like that because it is hand-built, obviously. They're nothing to worry about, but they do give the gun some personality. Next, we'll put the guide rod in, like so. Now we'll take the frame and slide the frame onto the slide. move the slide back so that the takedown notch lines up with the notch in the frame. Push the barrel back. And now in the slide stop hold, you're going to want to make sure that that lower hole in the barrel link lines up, because this part, the slide stop, needs to retain it. I put it in like this to make sure I've got the link in place. Then pull it out a little bit, and push it in like so. Usually you can push this straight in, but if you're worried about scratching the frame or the slide with the slide stop, that's called an idiot scratch. You can use your 1/16 roll punch to depress this deadent right here and get it in, but this gun has a particularly good fit, so it goes right in. Push the slide forward, place the weapon on safe. Now we're going to take the recoil spring, put it in along with the cap. Push the cap down as far as we can, then use the barrel bushing wrench. Now I'm applying pretty strong pressure on this right now. And we're going to rotate it back where it goes and let the cap spring back up into position. So that's good. Now I've got the gun put back together. Let's do a functions check. I'll show you how that works. Place the weapon on safe as it is now. I'll rather ensure it's clear. We know it's clear because we just took it apart. We're going to squeeze the trigger. The hammer should not fall. Now place the weapon on fire. Depress the trigger. The hammer should fall. While keeping the trigger pulled to the rear, cycle the slide and release the trigger. It should reset as it just did. Put the weapon back on safe. Squeeze the trigger. The hammer should not fall. This means the weapon is functioning normally and we're ready to use it. As far as loading goes, lock the slide to the rear, insert the magazine like so, and then depress the slide release. Place the weapon on safe. Now this is loaded and ready to fire once you put it on fire. An important note on safety. I know you're used to double action revolvers. You like an external hammer. This gun has one, but you should never decock on a live round. You could squeeze the trigger and gently lower that hammer down, but don't ever do that. It's not safe. There's no firing pin block or transfer bar like in a revolver. So if you mess up just a little bit while you're lowering this, that round is going to fire. Now the firing pin is not longer than its channel. So if you rest down on it lightly, yeah, the hammer's making contact with the firing pin and it's not long enough to hit the primer. But if you release the hammer and it hits that firing pin with any speed, the firing pin is going to build up enough inertia to strike the primer and fire the round. And that's not what you want. So this condition right here is called condition 1, or cocked and locked. I think this is the best way to carry one of these guns. This is how I carry it. Other ways that you might want to carry. Let's clear the weapon real quick. Some people carry hammer down like this. I don't like to carry like this. It's very safe, obviously, as far as negligent or accidental discharge, but it will require the use of your non-firing hand to charge it. And if you need to shoot off the range, then that's an extra step that you really don't need to be dealing with. So cocked and locked is how I prefer to carry, with a round in the chamber, as there's not one right now. We ejected it. Speaking of ammunition, this gun likes all kinds of ammo, particularly Federal and Winchester white box. Here's a spent casing, and look how the firing pin strike is a little bit off center. And that's okay. That's just fine with these guns. The location of the firing pin strike on the primer is determined by the relationship of the barrel to the slide. And this barrel sits pretty high up in the slide because the upper locking lugs in the barrel are fit to the locking lug recesses in the slide pretty well. As a matter of fact, there's 45 1/1000ths of fit between those two parts. So that's pretty safe, but it does move where the firing pin strikes, and that's totally acceptable. As of now, I've put about 200 rounds through this gun to test it for function, accuracy, and reliability. And it does really well. I think it prefers the Federal ammunition to the Winchester. Just like any other gun, it might like or dislike particular ammunition. So if you try something new and it gives you some malfunctions, don't get discouraged. Just go back to what it likes and what it knows. If there's a load that you particularly want to use, I can tune the gun to it. So just give it to me and provide me with the ammo, and I'll take care of it. There was another note about carry that I wanted to tell you about. I don't remember what it was. Oh, I wanted to show you about the safeties. So the thumb safety is pretty strong, and I think that's good for safety, especially if you're carrying concealed. This will be next to your body, and you don't want any kind of movement to accidentally put it on fire. This will never go on fire in accident. It takes a lot of pressure to get that to move. When the weapon is on safe, this part blocks the sear, so the trigger is never going to actuate the sear. Accidentally firing it by squeezing the trigger too hard is never ever going to happen. Those parts just interfere too much. And besides, the grip safety blocks the trigger. So if this isn't depressed, then the trigger can't even slide to the rear. So there are two safeties keeping you from accidentally discharging with a round in the chamber. So I think the carrying with a round in the chamber and the hammer back like so, cocked and locked, I think it's absolutely not a problem. I suspect that's the way Browning wanted us to carry in the first place, or else, otherwise he would have done differently. I think that's it for this. If you have any questions, just let me know. I don't know if you can see the markings on this frame. They're a little bit shallow. I didn't do the best polished job, but the engraver will clean that up when he's done. Any questions, just let me know. I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but I wanted to make this video so that you could refer back to it and get answers instead of having to track me down and ask me if you ever had any questions. But I think that wraps it up. I'll talk to you later.